The location for the Met on Fifth Avenue was selected by Frederick Law Olmsted. It's tucked in a corner behind two of the original portions of the Croton Reservoir, and the original master plan for the museum was developed in 1970 or 1872 by Vox and Mould, and the first part of the Met was the A wing was built in 1980, and that was the only part of the first master plan that was executed. Next, please. Over the years, the Met engaged some of the best architects of the time to do new master plans, including Richard Morris Hunt and McKim White. And again, only portions of these master plans are ever fully built. Next, please. And as the Met was continuing to plan, they were building new additions or buildings to increase the footprint. And these were very interestingly very indicative of the architectural styles of the time. And they also engaged some of the best architects of the time, McKim White, Kevin Roach, and others. And you can see the styles ranging from Victorian to Beaux-Arts to international style and late modern. Next, please. The Met is really a living institution and has replaced portions of its campus to meet all the new program-driven requirements. The McKim White Library was replaced by the new Watson Library, and the auditorium was replaced by what we know as the Grace Rainey Rogers Auditorium. And probably the change that's most apparent are the front steps, which Richard Morris Hunt designed in the 1920s, and these were replaced as one of Kevin Roach's first designs in 1971 when the visitation expanded from 1 million in the 1920s to close to 5 million when the new steps were built. Next, please. Landmarks really recognized this dynamic diversity, and in their designation report in 1967 said of the Met, one of the most notable monumental structures designed by eminent architects reflecting diverse architectural styles. So they recognized the strength of the legacy of the Met. Next, please. This is the extent of the museum when it was designated in 1967. You'll notice two large parking lots to the south and north, the main entrance on Fifth Avenue, but also another significant entrance in the park at the southwest corner. Next, please. So I want to talk a bit about the Roach-Dinklew master plan. Next, please. About the time of designation, the Met was was celebrating a centennial and starting to look towards future visioning. And they hired the firm of Kevin Roach, John Dinklew and Associates to develop a new master plan. Roach was at the time working on the Oakland Museum. He had a very profound integration of landscape and building, and you can see in the photographs of the Oakland Museum that working with Dan Kiley, he brought those two disciplines together very beautifully. Ada Louise Huxtable from the New York Times thought this museum could be a potential breakthrough in museum design. Next. A little bit closer to home, and about the same time, Roach was finishing up the Ford Foundation. Thomas Hoving, the director of the Met, knew both of these buildings and brought Roach in and hired him to do the new master plan. Next, please. A few of the major planning concepts of Kevin Roach's work were to really complete the footprint and do that by alternating limestone blocks and glass volumes. The circulation needed clarification, and he really improved lines of circulation throughout the museum. He utilized daylight as a wayfinding tool, and most particularly in parts of the museum, he really enhanced the relationship to Central Park. Next. So over the next 20 years, the overall master plan was basically completed, starting with the Lehman Wing in 1975, ending in 1991 with the Petrie Court. And if you notice, the LAW Wing was completed in 1987, In the master plan, it was originally planned for an extension of the European art collection. Next, please. The red solid line shows the extent of the Roach master plan. Again, following, but slightly smaller than the master plans that preceded it. Next, please. So let's talk a bit about the LAW wing. Next. These are 4 views of that southwest corner of the Met. Essentially tall limestone walls, rather blank, not a lot of windows. Next. It's interesting to compare the American wing, which was completed in 1980 and was planned in anticipation of the American Bicentennial, and the LAW wing, which was completed a few years later. From the exterior, they look very, very similar, but the programming and execution of the interiors were very, very different. Roach spent a lot of time with the curators developing the program and the interiors of period rooms and different types of spaces for the American wing. LAW was a different story. It's really not very, originally programmed for European art and not particularly reprogrammed well for modern contemporary art. Next, please. Here you can see comparative sections on the right-hand side, the amount of gallery space dedicated within that section. That's the tan color. So a very high percentage of that building was utilized for art exhibition. On the left-hand side, LAW wing, which is really a mashup of gallery space, mechanicals, back of house, public amenities, and parking. So a much, much lower percentage of that building was dedicated to the display of art. Next. Kevin Roach knew this too. This is a quote in an oral history. It never really got built properly. I was never very happy with what happened. There wasn't a clear program. It just got put together in pieces. Next. So overall, LAW just has never really served the Met well for the display of modern and contemporary art. There's just not enough gallery space. What there is does not have the proper ceiling heights, either mostly too low, and the tall spaces are actually too tall. The floor loading capacity is 50% lower than what would be required. And there's west-facing slope glazing. The exterior shell, 40 years old, is just does not perform very well. There's not much of a visual connection to the park. Accessibility is very limited, and it has an excessive amount of energy use. Next, please. So I'm just going to talk about a few of these. We have more in the appendix. We need to look at some of these other factors. West-facing skylights just would emit too much light, which would be very detrimental to the artwork. Therefore, the shades are permanently deployed, so there's no natural light in the galleries. There's excessive condensation, which is damaging the finishes under the skylights, and the very low walls at the base of the skylight provides a limited gallery height for display. Next. Accessibility is one of the major objectives for the Met, and a large portion of the existing LAW is on a mezzanine or split level, and to be able to access that for the mobility impaired, you need to find a staff person, walk about a block's worth of 180 feet to a back of house elevator, and then work your way back to the gallery itself. So it's really very, very inconvenient and does not meet temporary museum standards. Next, please. A new replacement building on the site would reduce energy consumption by 45%. And the carbon footprint after about 10 years through much improved operations would also be much lower than retaining the existing LAW wing. Next. We found another Kevin Roach quote just talking about the need to and his design for the museum to have flexibility to continue to grow and change as it needs to meet future needs. Next. I want to set up the new proposal that Frida's going to talk about, and really talk about a number of ways that it's really an appropriate new design. It occupies the same precise footprint as the existing wing. It's no taller than the adjacent Kravis wing. It maintains the scale of the overall building campus. Continues the use of limestone at the museum corners and has much better visual connectivity to the Central Park. For a number of reasons, it will much better accommodate the collection and will be fully accessible. We talked about the energy use being much lower. This weaves a new wing into the Roach Dinklew master plan with a universal style that Frida will talk about. And what I found probably most exciting, it really represents the next chapter in this long-time Met tradition of engaging prominent contemporary architects to work on do new wings for the building. So at that, I want to turn this over to Frida to talk about the new building.
Thank you, Richard. Good evening, everyone. I'm Frida Escobedo, and I will talk to you about some of the ideas behind the conceptual approach. So maybe we can start with the first slide. So the Met is really a city within a city. It has been described as a cosmos for the cosmopolitan. And in this model, we can see how it is a collection of buildings composed of 21 individual buildings constructed over the last 100 years. If we can go to the next slide. And if we see the overall plan, it really looks like a medieval town with small plazas and city streets and squares. And we really wanted to understand the rhythm and tempo of the museum to compose what we are proposing for a Tang wing. We wanted to build new internal collections. So if we can go to the next slide. Of course, we are occupying just the same footprint as the existing LAW wing. The site is a crossroads between several important connections and collections. We have, of course, the special exhibitions, 19th century European paintings, decorative arts, Africa, Oceania, and Americas. So the site is really rich in these transgeographical and interhistorical opportunities, and it will offer many opportunities for the curatorial department to create connections between collections and of course opportunities to weave connections between the past and the present. If we can go to the next slide. This idea of layering of history and different cultures, of course, is not new to the studio. We have been working over the past 20 years, trying to create some relationships between the history layers, of course, in Mexico City and more recently in New York. So these are some of the references that we're looking at. If we can go to the next slide. The layering idea of the Met is always very present for the conceptual approach. We can see on the left side of this image an image of the Petri Court, capturing the juxtaposition of both the original Beau facade and the postmodern Roche facade. And on the right hand, we have one of the most loved moments at the museum for me. It's a detail of the incomplete corniche of the Beaux-Arts Fifth Avenue facade, designed by Richard Morris Hunt, which to me signals that the Met is never complete and always evolving. If we can go to the next slide. We're also looking at some other references that signal that there is no really a hierarchy within the architectural canon, and some of the architectures that have not been represented at the Met should be incorporated. We are looking at some references like Huacapuyana in Lima, Peru, where we see some of these individual modules and how they're representing the monumentality through the creation of like human hand, and also some references that are pulling from the idea of weaving, of course, the work of Annie Albers. And this weaving is not just conceptual in the terms of weaving the program, but also how we're trying to pull from some of the references on the materiality and proportions of the building. So if we can go to the next slide. Of course, we're also thinking about the idea of porosity. This has been a central idea for developing the design. The idea of the lattice or celosia is always like present because it creates a just juxtaposition between the landscape and also the interior spaces, whether it's carving on stone or modular blocks. Weaving this with this fabric, it comes to a universal architectural language used for Mylinia as a tool of just trying to create relationships between an interior and exterior. If we can go to the next slide. So this is the first illustration that we have. It's showing the northwestern facade from a bird's eye point of view. The scale and proportions of the wing is modulated in response to the existing adjacent wings. The new exhibition terrace is shown on the fourth floor, and the landscape garden on the fifth floor is showing here to serve as a new public amenity, offering shaded space for reflection, respite, gathering, or education. The fourth and fifth floors are connected via an exterior stair with a celosia wall completing the interior circuit. If we can go to the next slide. This is showing just an illustration of how the western facade is not experienced in its totality. It's more like these fragments that you can see from the park. So you can see some of these snapshots that are shown on the upper side of the pictures. If we can go to the next slide. The massing and articulation for the Newton wing, of course, is aligned with the existing adjacent wings. We're building lower than the Great Hall roof ridge line and no higher than the existing adjacent mechanical room. If we can go to the next slide. The massing and the articulation for the Newton wing aligns also to the Petricourt facade. If we can go to the next one, please. And the stepping massing recedes in the space, as we can see in this analysis of the careful analysis that we did for the sightlines with this view from the Central Park and Fifth Avenue. If we can go to the next one, please. And also important to the concept was some of the ideas behind the Roche-Dinkeloo master plan. The stone volumes are really anchoring the corners. So we wanted to secure this idea where we're holding the corner in our building. We're keeping the proportions as well. So you can see that there's a juxtaposition between the glass, the stone, and then the adjacent glass that we have on Petricourt. If we can go to the next one. The material that we're using for the building is a similar stone, Indiana limestone. We're just thinking about different finishes for the material. We're thinking about a split face rock that will really create a lot of texture and playfulness with the light and the shadows. And in some other phases of the screen that we're proposing, we're using the belt sawn finish, so it will create a smoother surface. If we can go to the next slide, we can see here a first illustration of how this rich texture is really playing with the light and the shadows that the trees are creating, and also the depth and the porosity that we're trying to introduce in specific moments of the facade, particularly where we have the vertical circulations and how this is signaling a relationship to the park in a very subtle way. If we can go to the next slide, please. Another consideration was how to tie within the Roche-Dinkeloo master plan concepts of their unrealized circulation. As you can see, the general overview was to create these loops that people could navigate through. The loop created for what was proposed to be as a European galleries is, of course, interrupted by some of the circulation and services cores. If we can go to the next slide. So the idea was how to really create a new concept for this crust that was preventing that smooth circulation. And we decided to resolve it by introducing these two central cores that would concentrate the circulation paths and the service areas. So we could introduce a new circulation core that the promenade could be freely moving around And of course, adjacent to these spaces would be these openings to the park that would really allow you to relocate yourself within the space and to feel that you're connected to the park again and to the city. If we go back to the next slide. So this really creates a new connection with the overall rhythm and tempo of the museum. Of course, what we are looking at is that the museum has several different gravitational centers. So by doing these, we're reintroducing ourselves into the circulation path of the museum. If we can go to the next one. And these are some of the few interventions that we're doing. Of course, this is a view from the Tree Court Cafe in the existing condition. We're opening this moment so we can create better connection. You can see on the right side of the slide how we're introducing this opening and how the circulation path is indicating this vertical circulation that will lead to the upper floors, allowing you to recognize that there's no singular reading of the space, but actually a multiplicity of ways of reading the collection and different points of entry. If we can go to the next slide. Also, the daylight is a very important issue that we're considering. So the daylight is a wayfinding tool and a visual collection to Central Park. We recognize that the Rockefeller Wing and Petrie Court have significant connections to the exterior spaces. If we can go to the next slide, we can see that in our wing, we're creating different moments of connection. Some of them are connected to the vertical circulations, as I described before. And then in some other moments, we have frame views or rooms with a view that connect with the park in enclosed landscape areas. We can go to the next slide. These are the first visualizations where we can see these two moments. The one that I was describing earlier on the right, where we can see the celosia introducing some natural light that is filtered through these modules that are arranged in such a way that they can modulate the sunlight and introduce a lot of natural light that are aligned to the staircases. And on the left side, we can see the Northwestern Gallery that has a frame view to the park that is contained by a viewing garden that creates almost like an extension of the facade. We're understanding that the landscape works as an expanded threshold of the facade. So this really articulates a relationship between inside and outside. We can go to the next slide. Of course, creating this wing doesn't come with complications. One of the main challenges that we had to resolve was how to create strong connections with the existing wings. And particularly that happened on the first and second floors. And also to achieve the right heights for presenting contemporary and modern artworks. So we shifted some of the floor plates, and that allowed us to create a very specific rhythm within the museum, but also to create opportunities for different scales and proportions of galleries, which really guarantees the future of the wing because it really considers the formats of different artworks that are presented in the collection of the Met. If we can go to the next slide. This is an illustration of how we really changed the program. We moved some of the additional programs such as office spaces and art storage out of our building so we could really optimize the gallery spaces and the circulation, which was the fundamental question of this whole project. If we go to the next slide. And as I was describing before, in order to create these connections, this really represented an opportunity to have a chance of really think of the perfectly proportioned galleries that would allow us to present different formats from large size installations to more intimate galleries that would present maybe prints and photography with more light controlled conditions. So we have a variety of galleries that range from 8 feet to 22. And this is really our understanding of how to create a lot of flexibility for the future and also to time-proof it for the different types of formats that we will receive in the galleries. If we can go to the next slide. These are some of the illustrations just showing a couple of moments. The one on the left is, of course, more typical gallery at the center of the wing. We can have more light control conditions. And on the left side, on the right side, I'm sorry, we're seeing a moment of connection of one of the most beloved views of New York, I believe, which is a public view of New York City skylight, a skylight, and then how we can connect it to some of the gallery spaces to really have like one of these moments of connection between the art space and the city. If we can go to the next one. We're going to present you some of the drawings in details, just to explain a few of the finishes and the detailing that we have been developing. If we can go to the next slide. In this axonometric view, we can maybe we can just, yeah, thank you. In this axonometric view, we can see all of the finishing and all of the materials that we have in our wing. Mostly we have a single material in the facade, limestone, as I was mentioning, with different types of articulation. Some of it is celosia screen or this veil that is framing the circulation path, and also some screen facades that is creating a lot of articulation in the facade. If we can go to the next one. Some of the things that we were carefully studying was the proportion of this module. And even though we want to create some modularity that speaks of the human hand and the labor involved in the building process, we wanted to also be able to express that this building is perceived from many different scales, from the urban to the close proximity of the facade. So of course, on the lower sections of the building where this is perceived from a longer distance, we're using a larger module, and as you come in closer contact to the facade, when you're on the fourth floor or on the fifth floor terrace, this module becomes smaller, and it really explains the process of construction of the building. And this also allows us to create a forced perspective that makes the building seem to recede as you look up into the top levels. If we can go to the next slide. Here in this illustration that you see on the left, you can see the playfulness of the shadow lines and also the transparency or translucency that is coming through the facade with the celosia moment. So even though there's this light play in the open areas where we have this screen, there's also a lot of articulation where we have these modules that are pushing in and out to create this shadow play that is also in conversation with the shadows of the trees of Central Park. If we can go to the next slide. These are some of the sections details. Of course, we're considering the angling to get the right amount of light into the gallery spaces. If we can go to the next slide. Also very important to us was the articulation between the exterior spaces. So as we were describing, there's a connecting stair between the fourth and the fifth floor that really creates a promenade that not only connects the interior galleries, but also these exterior spaces. We can go to the next one. And also some adjacent spaces that need to be adjusted, such as the Petite Cour facade, where we can relocate some of the art movement through these massive elephant doors and some of the openings by removing some of the bay curtain walls to be able to operate the artwork more easily. If we can go to the next slide. An aerial view of our wing, where we can see all of the articulation of the massing and of the facade, and of course, the different uses of the terraces. Next one, please. And I'll hand it now to our landscape partners. So, Nick,
Great.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Frida. Thanks. As Frida mentioned, I am Nick Koster, and I'll be presenting on behalf of the Central Park Conservancy for the design of the landscape around the Tang Wing. Next slide, please. Wanted to just start with the goals for the landscape project, which are about enhancing the park user experience through accessibility, refining the landscape quality and character, and improving the park museum interface. Next. As with all the Conservancy's work, we like to understand the history of the landscape in context of the park. The plan you're seeing here is Olmsted and Vaux's winning design for the Greensward plan. And as shown on this map, it did not originally have a provision for a large public structure within the landscape. Next. As Richard mentioned earlier today, in 1872, Olmsted and Vaux provided guidelines for the addition of the Met Museum in the park within this location, specifically chosen situated between the reservoir wall, the two sunken transverse roads that bisect the park, and the Fifth Avenue street edge. Next. And as you've seen in the architecture presentation today, the building was added on to many times since its establishment, and the park landscape around the museum also continued to evolve with the additions and modifications like the obelisk and various changes to park circulation. Next. In the 1930s, the relationship of the museum and the surrounding park landscape was significantly altered with the removal of the receiving reservoir. In its place, the Great Lawn was created, removing a barrier and connecting the park to the landscape around the Met. This radically changed the relationship of the park to the museum building. Next. However, not all the changes that happened after the creation of the Great Lawn for the better of the landscape. And in the 1950s, a parking lot was added, replacing the former carriage drop-off. Next. So the Roche-Dinkeloo master plan and museum expansion that Richard shared in his presentation, this really creates the extent of the Met footprint in the park that we're familiar with today. Next. In the 1980s, the New York City Parks Department prepared a landscape master plan for the landscape around the Met that was to address the planting and park circulation. Some of that was implemented in the 1990s by the Central Park Conservancy, which included the moving of the playground closer to the perimeter of the park, which you see here in the photos. Next. We're now going to briefly go through some existing conditions photos of the site. Next. So the existing landscape, it's primarily a lawn that berms up to the building and has with just a few trees in it. Next. There's a pinch point at the corner of the building defined by a steep slope and a compacted lawn. Next. The west side features an evergreen screen, which is out of character with many other park landscapes. Next. The loading access from the park is also not well integrated into the building at the Petrie Court. And next, a final view from the drive where showing an asphalt path cutting through the planting that creates a desire line from the landscapes across the drive. Next. Before and as we get into the design, we just wanted to start with this view from the adjacent landscape of the park, just to highlight that it's really important for us to be thinking about the landscape design in all seasons. Next. These photos are some examples of landscape character of other areas of the park that we'll be implementing with the new design. Next. Our goals really are to create seasonal interest with the planting at an understory, define lawns, and increasing biodiversity with the plant selections. Next. Here are a series of diagrams highlighting the updates to the landscape design. We'll be relocating the path, and that will really relieve that pinch point between the park and the building. And we'll be also using this as an opportunity to create an ADA accessible path between Fifth Avenue and the Great Lawn with its realignment. Next. In addition, relocating the path allows for regrading to create a better relationship between how the museum wing meets the park. It also allows for the relocation of the loading access away from the edge of the building. Next. Regarding the planting design, we have 15 design-related tree removals and 2 trees that will be transplanted. We're proposing to plant between 40 and 50 new trees as part of the planting design. Next. So in addition to the trees, we'll be planting a diverse understory, which will be characteristics of the photos that I shared with you a few slides earlier. These will be planted around the building, creating a layer of visual interest and habitat that didn't previously exist within the landscape. Next. So now we're going to walk through a series of sections around the building from north to south. We're showing the planting design at a 10 to 15 year maturity in all of these sections. Next. So at the window here that Frida had shown, this is close to the southern corner, highlighting the new grading and planting. Next. This one's cut further down at the western facade, showing the cut through at Gray Wacky Arch. Next. And on the southern facade, closer to the corner, showing the relocated path moved away from the building, creating the accessible path and the planting and grading updates. Next. In addition to the planting palette, we'll be using standard mark materials, including asphalt with block edging, settee benches, pipe rail, and one new material we'll be using as a reinforced lawn surface, and we'll be using that at the loading access point from the drive instead of asphalt. So I'm now going to turn it back to Frida, who's going to walk through the views from the park.
So I'm just gonna quickly show you a sequence of images. We can see here the sequence on the dots. We can go to the next slide. We see a view from Fifth Avenue. You can see on red the outline of the building before and after. We can go to the next one, a view from the West Path. Next one, a view from Fifth Avenue. Next one, a view also from the Southwest Path. Next one, Southwest Path. Next one, Cedar Hill Path. Next one. Next one. Southwest, thank you. Next. A view from the East Drive. Next one. Another view from the East Drive. Next one. And a view from Cleopatra's Needle. Next one. And a view from the East Drive in the summer where we have a little bit more vegetation. And a view from the East Drive from the Northwest. Next one. And that's a rendering also from the southwest corner. Thanks. So I'll hand it over to you, Brett, I think.
What? I ate.
What are you doing? Do we have any further presentation? Brett, are you finished?
This is a whole
Sorry,
presentation.
I
Yes.
was trapped. I'm sorry, David. I couldn't unmute myself. We are complete. Thank you so much. We're happy to answer any questions.
No, thank you. A very informative and thoughtful presentation. And we will now go to the public to see if there are questions or comments. And I'll rely on Kevin to watch for the hands.
Stephanie Reckler.
Stephanie?
Yes, I am wondering how the descendants of the Wallace Atchison family feels about taking down their building, and what discussions have you had with them? I appreciate this wonderful presentation. It was fascinating, but I am concerned about other donors, major donors to the museum, and what sort of assurances do they have that their donations are not going to be standing for as long as they expected.
Hi, I think I can unmute now. Thank you for the question. So we don't do anything without speaking to donors even when we renovate a gallery, and we have the full support of the Lila Atchison Wallace Foundation for this project. We've spoken to them for many years about it and shared our plans with them, and they are comfortable with the plan.
And so what, can you
No,
hear
it's
me?
not, we're not here for discussions. We're here for questions and answers. If you have a quick comment, we'll take it.
So how can you assure us that this is a better plan and that you couldn't use the existing LAW to simply renovate it?
So, we have done many studies to answer that question, and we've looked at this in many different ways. We feel like the plan that we're proposing is the best for our current collection and that of the future. So, for example, if we were to just gut renovate within the existing shell, and achieve accessibility on all floors, as well as the appropriate ceiling heights for galleries, we would have less gallery space than we do now. So that's not feasible for us moving forward to, spend that kind of money to get less gallery space in a compromised situation. In order to get a fully accessible building, we need to add 2 cores, right? Which fundamentally, right now we only have 1 core. So when you go into the wing now, if you're walking through the Michael C. Rockefeller wing, which you can't do right at this moment, but in the past you could have, you kind of hit a wall of bathrooms and elevators. That's the only core in the wing now. So if you are in a wheelchair or with strollers or have mobility issues, you have to double all the way back right now to go in an elevator and get up. In the new wing, we'll have 2 cores. So no matter where you are in the wing, you'll be able to take an elevator. Right now we have 2 passenger elevators in the wing. We will have 4 in the new wing. That fundamentally changes the geometry of the existing building to begin with. And then in order to get the appropriate gallery space and floor plates that we need and ceiling heights, we're proposing this renovation, which we think is the right thing for the museum.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Next.
If you have a question, please raise your virtual hand. Not seeing anyone, no.
For this extensive presentation, not to have a question or two, but we'll go to the committee. Oh, I see we have Judy. Well, Judy, we're treating you, I guess, we'll treat you as Parks Department, and so why don't you give us your question?
Okay, one is for the museum and one is for the park. I wasn't here at the very beginning. I apologize. I had another meeting. What is the roof of this building? It looks green, but if you talked about it, I didn't hear it. I wasn't here. That's my first question.
I should probably just keep myself unmuted.
Yeah.
I will do that.
Yeah.
I will do that. But thank you for the question. So you are correct, and we have not spoken about it. We are proposing a green roof for the top of the 5th floor. It will be not super thick, but we'll have some type of growth on it and sedum on it because we think it's the appropriate thing to do for the environment and for this location in the park. So we are proposing a green roof.
People will not be up there, right? It won't.
No, people won't be on that level, but then we have 2 terraces. So we have the 5th floor terrace, which is the same level as our existing roof garden, and then the terrace below. And the 5th floor terrace also has planting and landscape on it that will be accessible to the public.
Right, I saw that. And the Parks Department is doing that, or the museum is doing that?
So we are doing that with Thomas Woltz, Nelson Bird Woltz Landscape Architects, are the landscape architects for the terraces, and Central Park Conservancy are the landscape architects for the parks surrounding the museum. And we have coordination meetings with all of us together to talk about the plantings and the relationship between the 2.
Great. I think that's terrific that everybody works together. Now for the Parks Department, I know there were not you said there were not very many trees, Mr. Costa, around the building. You'll be removing the existing trees and planting new trees? And if so, what are you doing with the existing trees, if anything?
Sure. Yeah. So thanks for the question, Judy. So there are 13 trees that will be design-related removals for the regrading. With those existing trees, the Conservancy, we've been looking at opportunities for reuse. There are some local companies that look at alternate materials for trees. So that's something that will keep going as we're just sort of in the design development phase of the project. So something that we'll look to see if they'd have a useful life as something
That would
else.
be great. I hate to see a tree chopped up, even though you're giving us new ones.
Mhm.
So I think the plan looks good, what we've seen of it. I also think that I would like in the future to invite you to come to Parks just to talk about the planting itself as you go along in the planning.
Oh, absolutely. We'd be happy to come back.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome. We'll go to the committee now.
We have a question from Maggie Subhas.
Well, okay, we're still getting questions. That's fine.
Yeah, I just have a statement really on the, I live in the community and I'm a volunteer at the Met. I'm one of those people that you ask where the bathroom is. So I just want to really commend the architectural team for just improving the wayfinding in the museum and improving the accessibility and hanging space for the modern collection, which is expanding. So thank you for that.
Elizabeth Ashby.
Thank you very much for the very full and interesting presentation. I think that the visitors' experience it will be extremely well treated. I think that was the experience of your visitors will be excellent in this design. I think their views, their circulation has been very well thought out, and I think the visitors' experiences certainly will be well treated here. I'm a great admirer of the eastern facade of the Met Museum. So in order to be polite, I will not comment on the southwestern view, but of the building. The changes that you note, I don't think all the changes have been good, but I find I would rather not say what I think of the exterior view. Thank you.
Michelle Birnbaum.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of questions. How much height does this actually add to the overall height of the building?
So we have, hi, Michelle, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
Thank you.
sorry, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no, thank you.
We have a fifth floor now. The fifth floor of the new wing is at the same height, but the fifth floor is not enclosed. It's got the gazebo over it of our existing wing. So we are enclosing that fifth floor, and it adds about 20 feet. I'm going to ask one of my colleagues if they could give us the exact number, maybe Richard or Frida, but it's approximately 20 feet that it adds to the enclosed area of the building that aligns with the adjacent crevice wing bulkhead.
So you mean because you're going to put a roof on that?
Yeah.
And then there'll be an additional 20 feet above that?
No,
Or
no,
that
that's it.
includes?
That's it. Yeah. So,
For the-
Richard or Frida, are you on the call? Could you just, if you
Yes.
can unmute, just
Maybe
add
we
the
Yeah,
height?
there's
Yes.
a very good slide about that. You might want to see
Yes,
that.
we can
Yeah.
go back to that slide. Maybe we can see the elevations.
Thank you. Just so we can give you the exact number, Michelle, if we go back. I think this one's
Yes.
good, right? Okay.
Mhm.
So,
Yes.
Frida, yeah, do you want to describe the height change? There.
Yes, so on the upper drawing, you can see that the existing log roof is at 168 feet, and we're going to 188 feet, which is aligned to the elevator machine room.
Aligned to the elevator machine room.
That's correct. Yes.
Of the
Okay.
adjacent wing. Yep.
And
So, yeah, sorry.
right, so you're adding another 20 feet. So the overall height of the building will be
188.
188.
I think, Frida, you should explain that we're not changing the bulk as you see it. We're only putting a roof on the existing bulk.
Okay. Oh, that's helpful, actually, David. Thank you.
Yeah,
Um,
it's good to know there's already a trellis approximately that height. And as Brett said, we're enclosing what is
Sorry, can't hear you.
there's
I
already a
think-
trellis at approximately that height. We are enclosing an area that already has a roof but not walls around it. So we're just expanding that fifth floor with the enclosure.
So how many overall square feet will you be adding?
So of the existing wing, because we're actually getting more ceiling height, we're not actually adding a significant amount of square footage to the overall wing, to the overall existing wing. But what
Okay.
we're doing is reallocating space to galleries. So right now we have 49,000 square feet of gallery space, and I think is it 100 and what's our overall total, guys? 135,000 above the parking garage, something like that, existing. And then in proposed, we're getting up to 70,000 square feet of gallery space because we're taking all the things that we don't need and moving them out of the wing.
Taking
And
them
therefore,
out.
that's what the volume change is about. It's the height for the gallery space, but it's not
Okay.
actually a significant increase in square footage.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, can you just tell me a little bit about the stone finish,
Yes.
the exterior?
Yeah,
Yes.
Frida, would you like to do that?
Yes, and maybe we can go back to the slides where we were showing some of the detailing for that. So we're using the same Indiana limestone that is present on the Fifth Avenue facade. We wanted to create a conversation between the articulation of that building and also to have a conversation with a strict grid that is presented in the Roche addition. So we're thinking about an Indiana limestone that has a split face. This, of course, creates a very organic feel to the stone that plays very beautifully with light. And on the sides of the celosia, you can see the belts on. So it's almost like you're going from rough to smoother surfaces. And on the inside of the building, we also have some stone finishes. So there's a continuity between the inside and the outside spaces.
And when you say, are you lighting that part of the exterior?
There will be some soft lighting. The idea is for this to create some soft glow as the rest of the facade is illuminated. But also we will get a few like light sources from the inside as we have the celosia, which is creating some permeability, so we can see some of the circulation on the inside.
Will you be presenting a lighting plan?
Yes, of course.
You will.
I was just
Okay.
going to add, Michelle and Frida, we're working with Central Park Conservancy and the Parks Department on lighting. I think there's not a desire for the building itself to be lit, although of course, just like in the Rockefeller wing, when the lights are on inside, there's a soft glow on the outside. But we are going to coordinate security lighting and make sure that it's, you know, appropriately lit for safety reasons. But, you know, there's concern from Parks and Central Park Conservancy, rightly so, about kind of light bleed into the
Right.
park. So it's something we're coordinating closely with them.
And you will eventually present it to us?
We'd be happy to come back and show you the
Okay,
lighting as
terrific.
it's developed.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
David, we have a member of the public who wants to speak, Jamie Neary.
We will allow it, sure.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here tonight as a longtime Upper East Side resident, but really wearing two hats. The first is that I am currently the chair of the Mets Volunteer Organization. We have a group of 1,000 active volunteers, and we know firsthand how this Tang Wing is going to make the modern and contemporary collection so much more accessible to all of our visitors. Anyone who's ever answered a question knows how important the new wing is for people that are in wheelchairs or using strollers to get around the galleries. The galleries are going to increase the space, which Brett was just talking about, which is it's going to be great having so much more of our collection on view at any one point in time. And our volunteer guides are really excited about the plan that's going to physically integrate the Tang Wing with all of the collection areas that are nearby. This is going to help make cross-cultural collections and invite our visitors to focus on what brings people together as opposed to physically demarcating differences. And then the second hat that I'm going to wear tonight is that of a mom. My kids have really grown up in the Met. We spend lots of time in the neighborhood, playing in the park. My family has spent countless hours on the Great Lawn at baseball games. And following that, we always go to the Met. And anyone who knows that, you know, if you've endured an 8 and under doubleheader kid pitch baseball game, the Met really is a great respite after a morning like that. And, you know, try as I might to take my kids through the galleries and show them the ancient art that I love, they have always gravitated towards the modern and contemporary collection. And one of my favorite parenting moments is my middle son, for a middle school art project. He was asked to create his own work of art based on the work of a modern or contemporary artist. So of course he chose something that he was familiar with from the museum, and he chose Marston Hartley's Portrait of a German Officer. He liked it because it's big and it's got bright colors, and you know there's military pageantry. And what he did was he created a portrait of an 8th grader, and he replaced all of those military symbols with baseballs, hockey sticks. There was an Xbox controller there. And they also wove in flags representing his Irish heritage, Happy St. Patrick's Day, school pride, and his Catholic faith. And, you know, my son, he says very little, as many teenagers do. So it was amazing for me to see him express himself and his identity and his feelings in this way. And so I think the Tang Wing is going to be such a gift because, you know, it has this transparent facade that really invites people, park goers, maybe some baseball players, into the galleries. And, you know, it just invites everybody to experience the collection and to see themselves in the art. So thank you for letting me say a few words tonight.
Welcome.
David, one more person from the public, if
Let's give that person, and we made exceptions, we'll make another.
Hi, everyone. My name's Erin, and I just want to piggyback off of what Jamie said. I'm one of the 1,000 volunteers who works at the museum. I'm a weekend highlights tour guide. I also live in the neighborhood. I'm in Carnegie Hill. For a lot of guests, the 1-hour highlights tour might be the only way that they interact with the museum, especially for a lot of our out-of-state and international guests. The highlights tour gives them a flavor of 7 or 8 works across the permanent collection. And as of right now, I completely avoid the modern and contemporary collection because a lot of our visitors are in wheelchairs. We have a lot of strollers, and the accessibility just really makes it difficult to navigate the space for a highlights tour. Right now, the only modern and contemporary painting I have in my tour is the Carrie James Marshall studio painting that happens to be in the European galleries right now. It's one of the most popular paintings on the tour. There's a lot of interaction, a lot of questions with it. So I'm really excited for the Tang Wing just to be able to actually integrate more of the modern and contemporary art and not just rely on what happens to be hanging in the other galleries. So I just thank you for giving me a little bit of time and letting me share some of my experience. But
Yeah.
I'm really excited for the tour to have that, the tour group to have that.
We're tying everything you're saying back to the design, but we are supposed to be talking about context and appropriateness. And if we can, as a committee, stay with that, I would appreciate it.
Alita?
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. I think I love the Met. When I moved back to New York, I joined the Met and feel like it's my museum, or I'm a part owner of the museum. I feel proprietary towards it, and I think a lot of people do. It's a really spectacular vessel for art and architecture. It's just a wonderful place. So, and also as chair of the CB8 Arts Committee, I fully support the museum's interest not only in being able to show more of its artworks, but in making it easy for the public to get around and know where they're going. And I relate to how difficult it is. But having said that, it's very bulky from the park's view. I'm not really happy about that. It just looks huge and maybe much bigger than without the roof, and much taller. Maybe it's just the perspectives from what I'm seeing. So I have a little bit of trouble with that, but I mean, I support it anyway, although it does seem rather large. And with a building that seems to just be expanding. And again, I understand and support the Met's acquisitions and increased exhibition. But I also have a question about the plants, since the Landmarks Conservancy is here. Is there any room, I would urge, for native plants, given the Central Park's position as a huge migratory bird corridor? And also, as long as you also mentioned redoing the path, I would ask you to really consider the way bikes use the park and be very, very careful, because bikes will go tearing down that path as they do on every other path, and pedestrians need to be protected, especially when it's easy to see inside the Met from the glass and from outside the museum. You wouldn't want anyone to get hurt. It's bad enough in front of the museum. So so that's all my comment is really on the outside. I think the work with the limestone is very interesting, and how you're matching it, and how you've made such a strong effort to connect the various aspects or areas of the museum and the outside, and really make it, I think, unique in the city in that way. Anyway, thank you very much. That's it, David.
Sarah?
Hi, thank you for your presentation, and it was a real privilege to see Frida Escobedo present. And I just really enjoyed how the presentation took us through both the design and its functionality. And my first impression is that the museum would be gaining with this design an incredible amount of functionality with a restrained expansion. So when it was really helpful to see the public views, the path, and the comparison of the current view versus the projected view of what the new wing would look like with the new landscaping. And we've seen a number of museum renovations come through, and and for many of them it was a lot of bulk and a lot of function, but I really feel like this design is a lot of function with a restrained amount of bulk. In terms of the exterior view, I like how the design organizes that side of the museum using similar materials, but without a lot of glass. And it's bringing a lot of light in without creating or without creating just a glass box, And so I thought that that was really a brilliant way to bring light in and while keeping it kind of the new design with kind of touching back to the old design, but bringing it forward. I commend the group that worked on this for working together with everyone. It's not common that we have presentations from the architects and the community institutions all together. And the fact that you all work together is it makes me feel good about how this project will not only be developed, but also the long-term aspect of this and how it will affect the community and the responsiveness of the project managers to the community. And thank you, Judy and Alita, for asking the questions about the plants. I had Judy's questions about the trees too, and we are big fans of trees and really appreciate especially the large trees in our community here. And so as much so if any trees are as the trees are the 13 that are being removed for the and replaced with other plantings, that we hope they find new homes and continue to produce oxygen for us elsewhere. Thank you.
John?
Thank you. I thought it was a great presentation, but I don't really have any questions. Thank you.
Kimberly?
Sorry, I wasn't expecting you to get to me so quickly. Thank you to our friends at the Met and the Central Park Conservancy. I thoroughly enjoyed this presentation. I want to echo something that Sarah just said about a restrained expansion. And I'm sure most of the people on this call know that this community has been through, dare I say, a bit of trauma recently with plenty of renovations and museum expansion projects that were very sensitive to this. And I also want to be sensitive to Alita's comments about how it feels bulky. But I do appreciate that we're not going above and beyond with height increase, as I understand it, staying within the footprint of the existing Tang wing as it exists today, or excuse me, the Law wing, LIW wing. What I really appreciated about the design of the new wing itself was, as you said, using light as that wayfinding tool, and how the new design still allows the scenery around the park to be not in your face, but present as you're navigating through the wing, how the light comes through. And I also really appreciate, I know we talked a lot about accessibility for people in wheelchairs, et cetera, but you've also made usability improvements with this renovation. And I say usability, meaning it's now a more user-friendly experience for visitors, regardless of if you have a disability. If you're a mother with a small child, it's just a more user-friendly experience for everyone in general. And I say that as someone who has brought in many nieces and nephews who all seem to have meltdowns in the modern wing, as luck would have it. So I do appreciate the placement of those areas in the middle of the new wing. I believe that's all I wanted to say, but overall in favor of this application. Thank you.
Valerie?
Hi, everyone. Just a couple of comments and then a question. I think that first I want to commend the museum for their outreach to us over these last couple of months. It seems like a long time, but maybe it hasn't been. And inviting us as best you can to have some participation in the lead up to this. I know we appreciate it. I also think that I just want to say I appreciate very much Ms. Escobedo's dialogue here tonight in terms of that there's got to be a conversation between the newer and the older part of the museum. And I think that's what keeps everything interesting. It can't always look the same. It has to pay some homage to what's existing, but then recognize what's going forward in terms of the art world and the beauty of the museum and the park together. And I think I'm very excited to see how this all turns out. We saw a lot in terms of the lead up to tonight regarding the actual building. So I guess I'm more focused on the landscape. And my question really there is, I really didn't hear the Central Park Conservancy saying that those 13 trees that were being removed were going to be replanted somewhere in the park. I mean, what exactly is going to happen to those? If you can answer, because one of the issues we've had with a very recent museum expansion renovation is the treatment of the landscaping. So if I heard correctly, we're going to do this, I think, in 2 parts. So I think I'm more interested at this point in terms of how we're going to address the landscape issue. I think Nick has to be unmuted, Kevin.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. Oh, thanks for the question, Valerie. Yeah, so just to recap a little bit about the trees. So there are 2 trees that are small enough to be transplanted elsewhere in the area. And then there are 13 that, due to the grading changes that we need to make around the building, we'll be needing to remove those. And in response to, I believe, Judy's question earlier, what we're looking at doing is on all of our projects, we've been in conversations with a local company that looks for wood reuse. So it would not be that they would be replanted, but we would look for another useful repurposing of that wood here within the New York area. But in terms of the tree planting, we're looking at getting as large of caliper trees as we can from nurseries. We've already started conversations with local nurseries that supply trees to Central Park on an annual basis. And so looking at the trees that we could even tag now in the near term and sort of contract grow for their ultimate placement in the park. So, it's something that tree removal is something we don't take lightly, but, we're really wanting to make sure that we have the best design going forward for this project.
Thank you.
Oh. Kevin is, well, I think Christina, we still need to go to the rest of the committee, and then we'll come to you. Marco, we haven't heard from you, but I don't know if I'm missing anybody.
Thank you, David. I would like to ask if they put the slide of the whole complex, please. There is an air view of the whole complex, included the proposal.
Henry, can we put up the slide that shows the aerial view of the museum? If you're able to.
While they do that, I'm going to make a couple of points very quickly. No, I'm not trying to discuss this point because David clearly mentioned exactly what is our purview. Oh, the interiors are not going to make any comments because it's not our purview. The replacing of the falling building envelope with something equal is not an improvement. And aligned with the Met sustainability goals, you cannot align with something that is not unsustainable. You have to comply with the New York City reduction of carbon emissions. I think that's it, these simple comments. Okay, you don't have the large picture of the top?
Yeah, Henry, could you go back to the big aerial view? I think it's the Richard's first slide. It was the one, yeah. This one?
No, 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 the 3D, please. It
Oh.
was one. It was one.
I believe Frida ended on it. It's the last one, Brett.
Oh, of the new wing.
Yeah, it's the new wing on the whole complex.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, of course.
3D. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you for your presentation. I appreciate a lot, but I found that there is lack of dimensions and lack of a study of the facades, so we can have a judgment exactly what you propose, even though that you use the same footprint of the building. Since I can see it from here, you see the little dots on the terrace? That is a people, no? And that is the size of the scale of this development. That's telling exactly the proportion with the rest of the complex, regardless if you provide the dimensions or not. The height of the expansion. At the rear facade, comparing heights with the southwest and northwest, your proposal is too tall. Indeed, your proposal is the most predominantly in the entire complex. Your proposal is too tall even with a series of the setbacks. Bulkiness would this project create more shadows on the surrounding landscape that would impact negatively in the vegetation. In short, the building is too high, too ambitious. The entire rear wall, rear facade, and the part of the south facade and with a significant wall inclination at the top, reducing the bulkiness. Then it has a less negative visual impact of the buildings and reduction of shadows on the landscape. Your proposal omits these details or elements, which makes your base even taller than it looks. Furthermore, the bulkiness and reduction of the high trees would impact on the fauna. As per the Conservancy, the park provides a habitat for wildlife, including as a stopover of the Atlantic flyways for over 200 species of bird. Therefore, making too tall would impact this bird and having plenty of glass. Regardless, you want to put whatever protections on the glass, it is very dangerous for these animals, or these birds, I'm sorry. Massing does not have coherence or proportion with each other. This proposal consists in 3 volumes. The base is disproportionately bulky. The middle has a significant setback toward the west and a minimal towards to the south. And the last one, the smallest volume, has reasonable setback toward the west. The predominant rhythm is established with a well-conceived texture. However, the arbitrary openings, fenestration, that looks like a gel, on the facade lose the opportunity to form a unified whole. In short, it looks like the function follow the form, wrong approach. The handicap ramps, I'm referring to the landscape. 2 issues on that part. The ramp and the drainage of this area. The northern and eastern ramp do not have enough distance to develop the ramps to become qualified as an accessible. You can reduce, but it cannot call accessible, because clearly accessible is when you're in compliance with the ADA compliance. Remember, the rule is for every 12 inches running, 1 inch is up. Also, 40 feet, after 40 feet of development, you need a landing of 5 feet. Therefore, I am asking, have more details on the proposal, otherwise your proposal is problematic. Finally, I am not a landscape architect. Please provide a rationality to replace those existing trees. Beautiful tree, that especially the tree that is on the south part is extremely exuberant. I think that's it. Thank you.
Christina? Christina, are you there?
You didn't have the sign for unmuting. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It was very impressive. I just have a very specific question on the southwest corner. If you could put that slide up with the stairs. It's an architectural question and accessibility. No, the close-up. There's a close-up of the terrace. Is that the terrace connecting stair? Correct. Thank you. So here is my question. How many stairs are there? And what are the materials?
So, hi, I don't have the exact number of stairs. One of my colleagues can get that. They're stone stairs on the exterior.
Is the architect still on?
Yeah.
Is Escobedo still on?
It might not be unmuted though. So let's see if.
Well, let's see. There's at least 10 or 12, right?
Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. Yes, it's one floor going up. So I don't have the exact number of steps, but it's also accessible because we have 2 circulation cores. So adjacent to
No. Well, excuse me. My question is, there's stone steps, right? A dozen stone steps. And when I see steps for young and old, without a railing, I cringe. They can be slippery when they're wet. A mother's carrying a toddler. There are so many things that can happen on those steps. And
Christina,
I know
as the architect of record, and we'll be signing the drawings, I will absolutely verify that there will be railings because it's code required.
Okay.
This is a very early and beautiful conceptual sketch.
Okay. Well, that puts me at rest because the minute I saw that, I was cringing.
No, not to worry.
Not to worry. We will include all of the safety measures, and of course, we're thinking about the texture, not just in terms of the aesthetic, but also in terms of safety, and to make it a very safe and pleasant.
But there are many steps without railings because architects think it's not aesthetic to have a railing. So thank you. You've answered my question. Thank you for your presentation. It's a pleasure to see you.
Pleasure to see you as well.
David and Jane.
Oh, David, I'm sure you want me to speak first, and I feel sort of embarrassed that I have to speak as an acting co-chair. In any case, I really appreciated David reminding all of us that we're here to vote on the context and appropriateness and nothing else. I have to say that I wish I could be a genie and bore into Elizabeth Ashby's mind to find out her real thoughts. I will very reluctantly support this application because I think it is just too bulky for the site and out of context with the front elevation in toto. I understand that the Landmarks Commission likes something to be totally different if it's a new building and it's being added on, but I really have grave reservations about it. But nonetheless, I will support because I think the Metropolitan Museum in general is such an incredible institution. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I think it is also bulky, but I think you've done a very good job of visually minimizing the bulk. I think it's bulkiest when you look down on it, which is what Marco had us do. But when you look at it from afar, I think it really does work. And I think we do have a unique vision. And from the point of view of finding a young architect or an architect who's finding her place, I think that we do have a unique vision. And from that point of view, I think the Met has made a good choice. I also find that it's clearly well done. I think that you have to balance the needs against doing the very best you can architecturally. And I think that the blocks of stone, the way they're handled, are going to create a great deal of interest. First of all, I think that as a scale issue, they contrast nicely with the front of the building. And as a piece of architecture, they will create so many different ways of seeing the building, because as you move past it, the way the blocks will relate to one another will keep changing. And sometimes it'll feel fairly solid, and sometimes it'll feel fairly open. And I think that's part of what I see as a rather exciting experience, and yet still, to quote Sarah, a restrained experience. I think it's really well balanced. I will break my own rule and talk about the interior for 1 second. Architects make diagrams, and it's nice to see the diagram of the circulation actually realized in what I think is going to be a very successful interior. So I broke with my rule, but I think in this particular case, it's just important to point out how successful I think that will be, and that it is very much a part of this building. I think that pretty much covers my initial thoughts. I think the presentation was well done. I think it's thoughtful. I think that you've done the best that you can that anybody could hope for in terms of balancing getting as much gallery space as possible and getting a massing and a facade that work with the park and the rest of the building. From my point of view, you deserve congratulations. So certainly my vote is a yes. At this point, I think we do need a resolution. Jane?
Move to approve as presented.
Thank you. Second? Alita, thank you. Kevin, please call the roll.
Could I just add something quickly, David, please? I just want to say that because even though I do think the building is bulky, there is a really strong public interest in the art and the work of the Met. And for me, that balance is on the side of supporting the Met, whereas for or an office building, it wouldn't be. But the public interest here is so overwhelming, and the Met is such an important institution to our neighborhood and to the community. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, Judy. You want to say something before we vote?
Yes, I do. I think that we should have two resolutions. One, because it's separate agencies going before different commissions for approval. I think we should have approval for the museum and an approval for Central Park Conservancy for their presentation. Board 7 did it that way. They heard
No,
it.
I think that's what they wanted. They want two separate
asked for
resolutions.
two resolutions.
My resolution was just for the application for the museum.
Oh,
And
okay.
then we can have a separate one on the landscape.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Thank you.
Well, now we can vote.
Oh, my friend.
Elizabeth?
Is there a way to
For the
restart?
museum.
No. I just think they're from, I don't know, I
Elizabeth?
bought them off Jamin, so they're from,
Oh,
yeah.
Elizabeth, are you there?
Oh,
Elizabeth,
can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah,
Can you hear me?
we can hear you. What is your vote?
I voted yes for the institution of the museum.
Michelle?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
John?
I'm sorry, I said yes.
We didn't hear you.
Sorry.
Jane?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Marco?
No.
Christina?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
So we need a resolution for the landscape.
I'd like to propose a resolution, David, if I may, to support the proposal for the landscape as presented.
Second.
Can I ask a question? Is the landscaping including the green roof?
No, the
Green
Met
roof
is using
is
its own architect for the green roof, a different landscape architect.
Okay, so it's only for the surrounding.
Yes.
Correct.
David, may I add a friendly, suggest a friendly amendment?
We'll listen.
That if we could include a whereas that we encourage the Park Conservancy to replant as much as possible the 13 trees that will be removed. I mean, they may not be able to, but that it's our strong interest to encourage that.
Well, I don't think it belongs in the resolution that we're going to vote on. But I'll take it into account when I write the resolution. I think they were very clear that they don't see the ability to replant the trees. I don't want to tell them how to do their job. So I understand what you're saying, but I don't believe it belongs in the resolution.
I agree.
I don't see any. Yes, Valerie?
I thought maybe in the whereas or to address Alita's point regarding the paths. I know it's not really a landmarks issue. Maybe it's just that they'll come back to the Parks Committee and discuss the. I mean, I'm finding it hard to differentiate here between what we're talking about in terms of landscaping, in terms of the landmark versus what we're looking for.
Well, let me suggest that what we are voting on now is a conceptual idea about the landscaping. We are not voting on specifics. It's a conceptual idea. In the context of that, I think we should just vote simply.
Okay.
Thank you.
Since it was my resolution, can I say that I agree with Valerie on this one, and we should at least say that they should come back to Parks and discuss the methodology?
They've already committed to coming back to Parks.
Well, then it doesn't hurt to put
We
it in
don't
the.
normally put in resolutions that they should appear before another committee. This is our resolution, our committee's resolution.
Call the vote.
Elizabeth? Elizabeth?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Marco?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
Well, not to belabor it, but Judy can invite them anytime she wants on behalf of the Parks Committee.
We will, I've already been in touch with the Central Park Conservancy, and as they get further along, maybe next year sometime, we'll have them come back and we can make it a joint meeting so that your people can be notified as well to
And
attend.
can become your committee's resolution.
Well, we
On the
already just
landscape.
passed a resolution. I don't, unless they present something, I don't think there'll be a need for another resolution unless something changes dramatically when they present to us. But yes,
I'm sure you're right.
we will follow it up, and I can assure you they will be coming back to the Parks Committee.
Michelle?
Under what circumstance will we hear the lighting? Where will that be presented?
We're happy to come back to you as well on the lighting as we get further along in design. I don't want to say exactly when on, but I'm happy to kind of get back to you on that.
To
and let
this
you-
committee, to the landmarks.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And
Thank
we
you.
can also give you an update on our construction plans as well at that time, or we can come back again for that. So
Great.
we
Thank
can
you.
try and be efficient about that.
However, from the point of view of the intent of what you're going to do with the lighting, you've described that. And we're assuming that that intent is what's going to continue.
Yes.
Okay. Jane, I think we're ready for the next application.
This is 6074th Street, the Upper East Side Historic District. It's for, and the application is for alterations to the non-historic rear yard, expansion of an existing penthouse, an addition at the rear, and new elevator stair bulkhead. So we're ready
Okay.
for the presentation.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I did not give an official thank you to the team that did this
Oh,
presentation.
sorry, I didn't mean to rush.
It's I was my fault. I think it was a terrific presentation. We didn't all agree with everything, but on balance, it was as good a presentation as we've seen typically for this committee. So we congratulate you on the presentation, but more to the fact, congratulate you on the design. So thank you.
Thank you. We're grateful for your time, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jane, sorry.
No problem, not at all.
Should I go ahead?
Yes,
Yeah.
please
Or is
do.
that,
And
can
Aaron,
you
I
see
hope
my
you'll,
screen?
yes. And I hope you won't take too long.
Oh no,
I know
I'm going to
some
be.
people don't like me to say that, but
No, I'm going to be speedy tonight, Jane. Thank you for having us. I know this has been a long night for you, so we're going to move along fairly quickly here. Aaron Ruley, Higgins Quaysbarth and Partners, we're the preservation consultants for this project at 6 East 74th Street. I'm joined tonight by Thomas Jewel Hansen, who is the architect for the project. I'm going to move through this pretty quickly, but 6074th is located on the south side of 74th Street between Fifth Avenue and Madison, in the Upper
Sorry
East
to
Side.
interrupt, but can you
Oh.
try sharing your screen? We're not seeing the presentation right now.
Oh, you're not? Okay. Let me see. Let's stop share. Try that. Now, do you see it?
yes, thank you.
Great. Okay. So 6074th, in the Upper East Side Historic District. It was originally constructed in 1871 as one in a row of 7 Italianate row houses. And as you can see by the facade conditions, it's changed very significantly over time. And tonight, the proposal that we're going to be looking at is actually fairly modest. And the modifications are a new stair and elevator bulkhead that we see here. Existing's on the left and proposed is on the right. So new core for the building. And that means just extending out about 4 feet at the top floor of the building. It has a full 5th floor, or a 5th floor at the front of the facade that was added later in its history. Some new mechanical equipment on the roof. This is all minimally visible and over secondary elevations. And then, as you can see in the existing condition, we have an existing greenhouse on a 2-story rear extension, and just proposing to reconstruct that in brick to match the existing, and then some modifications to window openings on the rear elevation. Sorry, for some reason my screen. There we go. And so from the rear, here are those changes. That greenhouse that's so matching the high point of the roof line here and just building it out in brick and creating a new terrace from the existing window. And then there's some modifications to the windows at the rear that I'll go through. And then, of course, that extension of the existing 5th story. So just moving that out for 4 feet and creating a little extra space for new stair and elevator bulkheads. As we go through this, you'll see there's been a long history of change to the building itself, but also to the row and to the larger block. This is a really modest extension working within the existing building itself. No major expansion is included here, and it's all visible, minimally visible from secondary locations. So at a great distance from Madison and a little bit from the south on 73rd Street. So we'll take a look at that. As I mentioned, the row is, the building was originally one of a row of 7, numbers 6 through 18, East 74th Street, and you can see them here in this 1890s map in their original condition. And then by the 1950s, you can see how dramatically that has changed. So rear yard extensions in many of the houses, frontal extensions out to the property line in that early 20th century generation of change. And then, of course, the really significant introduction of apartment buildings that changed the character of the block itself. And the tax photograph gives you a sense of what those changes meant for the front facade. So with the stoop was removed, basement entry, oriel window, and then that added 5th floor, which exists today. And as I mentioned, the building had gone through a few generations of change. So here we've just kind of mapped that out. The purple are changes that occurred in 1898. So we got a 2-story extension off of the back at that time. And then in 1925, that was added on to, we have a additional floor and a half added to the rear extension, and then this 2-story extension to the south off of the back, as well as that 5th floor being added to the front of the building. In the 1950s, the building was converted for use as a dentist's office, and we got a stair and an elevator bulkhead that was added at that time. So here, just to give you a sense of the existing conditions, the existing rear facade, it's been coated, and we have the 1898 extension and then the 1925 extension. You can see to the east of us, sister building, rear extensions, rooftop addition, and then we are the first of the buildings in the row. So number 6 is the first building of that historic row. The building to our west was a individual building that was constructed. You can see the scale of that bordering our rooftop. At the top, that existing 5th story, this is the rear elevation of the 5th story. So it has a stucco facade, punched openings, and then this is our stair and elevator bulkhead that exists today. The greenhouse that I mentioned as being reconstructed is located here. This is off of the far south end of the building, and we have brick construction with the greenhouse sitting above that. And then just looking up at that facade, this is the 3.5-story extension off of the back of the building. Just give you a sense of the block context, here is number 6, and then number 4, which is of a slightly different scale, to our west, and then the neighboring buildings to the right. And here we can see into the rear yards, this sort of generations of change, extensions, 3-4-story extensions that extend all the way almost to the property line. And so there's been a varied history of change here, and we think that these changes really fit into that context quite well. So the proposal, no proposed scope at the front facade. Up at the rooftop, we have mechanical enclosures, and then beyond that, the bulkheads. These are all matching the existing height of the existing bulkhead. The mechanical enclosures will be a louvered screen with a bronze color finish. Beyond that is the bulkheads. The bulkheads will be copper clad. At the rear, we'll start from the top. And so we have the new proposed bulkheads. Here's our existing, and the proposed is on the right. The stair, elevator on the left, and stair on the right bulkheads. Then bumping that rear wall of the 5th floor out 4 feet. And And it'll also rise up an additional 3'6". So that's the parapet height. Right now, there's no edge on the roof. And so you're right at the, you can sort of walk up to the edge of it. So to give it legal parapet height at 3'6", and it'll have a cornice. That'll be stucco to match the existing punched openings within that section of the facade. Moving down to the lower facade, the fourth floor windows will remain as they are. That's the floor that the commission likes to keep continuous within the row to recall the history, the original layer of the buildings themselves, and then modifying the openings on the second and third floor. So you can see the existing openings are ghosted in, and the new proposed openings around that, they're being expanded and slightly relocated, but still maintaining the vocabulary of the punched opening. At the that two-story extension, the area of the greenhouse is right here. So that's just will be built up out of brick to match all the surrounding brick. And then everything is going to be coated. Our rear facade has been coated. And so the areas of the extension will be finished to match the existing coated rear wall. And then in terms of visibility, we have some sight lines from 73rd Street. Along 73rd Street, there are two breaks in the street wall that flank number 5 East 73rd. So here, looking over the parking entry for, I think this is 934 Fifth Avenue. And so this is the garage entry here. And so we're looking here at the building, and then zoomed in, we see the top floor windows, and then what would be the new plane of the existing fifth floor, and then the bulkheads above. And so that, again, that'll be finished. The penthouse, the existing fifth floor, will be finished in stucco to match the color of the existing rear elevation, and the bulkheads will be copper clad. Moving a little bit to the east, we have another break in the street wall. This is on the east side of number 5, and we get a view of a corner of number 6, and then what we're seeing here is actually number 8, East 74th. And so when we zoom in, you're going to get that same view, just the other side of it. So what will be the bulkhead above, and then that forward plane of the existing fifth floor. Moving around to Madison Avenue, so we're on the corner, a little bit north of 74th Street, on the corner of Madison, and then looking southwest, we have a view. This would only be visible in winter. And what you're seeing here is just the smallest corner of the new proposed bulkhead and mechanical enclosure below. And that is, and we see this in the overall view here, but it's a really minimal sight line from Madison Avenue, and layered within there's sort of mansards and chimneys and everything before we actually get to that point of view. No visibility over the front facade or from Fifth Avenue here from the west. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I just wanted to interject one thing. The windows in the back are all going to be new, right?
Yes.
And they're aluminum windows.
Yes.
The windows in the front, are they going to remain, and they are wooden windows?
Well, they are not actually. There is a violation from 1985 on those windows, and the new owner is putting in new wood windows to match the historic. And that's staff level scope, but that will be new wood windows.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public, Kevin?
Not seeing anyone, no.
So we can go to the committee, and we might do the reverse alphabetical order. Thank you.
No.
Thank you, Jane. Well, I think the elevator bulkhead, the extension on the roof, think it's fine with the mechanicals. I don't find no problems. The parapet also makes a lot of sense. The windows openings, I think, is good. The only thing I'm concerned is if they try to comply a violation in the front facade, replaced with wood windows. Why you change your criteria to use aluminum on the rear? I mean, I think that may be a little bit uncomfortable. The materials that you use, I think, is fine. And finally, the extension or the vertical extension that you have, I think, if I'm not wrong, I think you need a variance because you are not, even though that is the bottom sections, it is no compliance, no conforming, no compliance. Still, you want to enlarge the no compliance. I think the only thing you have to resolve that is with a variance because you are reducing the light and the air quality of the small rear yard. I think that's my comments. Thank you.
Kimberly?
Hi, thank you, Aaron, for your presentation. I think my comments are going to be biased because I'm just so excited to see a rear facade change that doesn't include enormous glass windows. But I will say, the bulkhead addition gave me pause, but overall I can support this. I'm also curious about, to Marco's point about if we're going to have wood windows on the front, why not the back? But it's a minor detail, and I can support this. But thank you for your time.
John?
I have no objections to anything here. Thank you.
Alita?
Thank you. I have an objection to the cladding on the bulkhead. Copper is really, I love copper and bronze. They're beautiful metals, but they are so visible, especially when the sun is shining on them, that whatever might be minimally visible with materials that match or natural materials of stucco or brick or something like that will be just heightened and enlarged by having those beautiful metals up there. So I think at this point, although I'm eager to hear what my colleagues say, I cannot support this.
Can I
Thank you.
respond to that? Are we in questions, David and Jean?
Certainly, you could respond
Yeah,
briefly.
I would, yes, sure. I think just very briefly that because it's copper, it's going to patinate. It's going to be bright copper for all of 2 months, I think. And then it starts to patinate. It's going to turn into a sort of a dull brown for a very long time before it becomes the sort of true green that you expect. We have existing copper trim on the existing bulkheads, and I think that sort of informed the decision. It will not be a reflective material. It's going to be soft, and with natural metals, you get that softening with age, and I think that was part of the thinking in terms of the palette. But understand your thoughts on it.
And thank you for your presentation, I should have said. And I know that it takes a while, and I know that it turns that dull brown. I still think it is just, and again, I like the metals. I just think they make it too visible. So I appreciate your explanation, though. Thank you.
Michelle?
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. What was the original window in here? Because here you're making them larger now, vertically, they're bigger, and they're 1/1s. What was the original window in this building?
I don't know
Both in
about
the front and the rear.
So the front we'll look at, but at the rear, I assume it was 1/1, or a 2/2 at that point, perhaps. But the windows in the rear were often much simpler than what was happening on the front of the building. It was an Italianate building historically, originally. We don't have any photo documentation of what it looked like originally. I would guess it was 2/2s. But the windows that we have to maintain because of the significant facade changes throughout the building's history are these multi-light. These are 6/6 and then 6 light casements, French windows, French doors on the parlor level. So these are the windows that Landmarks is having us restore to, the ones that are in the tax photograph because of
Okay,
the 1920s alterations.
Understood. So they're going to be with wood with multiple lights.
Yes.
Okay, can we go back to the rear again,
Sure.
please?
Mhm.
And can you give me, well, I'll stay on windows for a minute and then I
Mhm.
want some dimensions. So on the rear,
Mhm.
actually the screenshot that you had before that
Mhm.
shows the proposed and the existing of just the rear,
This one.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
good. So on the existing, you have you have divided lights on that horizontal window.
Mhm.
And now you're making that window smaller, and that is just plain single pane glass. Yes, that.
Yes. Yes. Mhm. They are. Those are not visible from the street.
No, I realize,
Yeah.
but they don't refer
Mhm.
that single pane doesn't refer to anything
Mhm.
except you have 1/1 under it, and then you have single pane again on the second floor, I guess.
Here
No,
or
I'm talking
oh,
about on the extension, exactly
yeah.
right there.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm not understanding why you have why you've done that to the
Yeah.
design. I too, by the way, let me go on record. I'd like to see the whole rear with wood windows. But specific to how you've designed that with single pane, a smaller window, I'm not sure why you've done that, and I
Yeah.
don't know that it enhances anything.
So I guess I would just start by, well, I would start that maybe our drawing isn't accurate because these are single pane windows. They might have there might be a grid on the interior, and that's what they were picking up on. But the building is, because of all of the changes that have happened, there are interesting floor level issues, and the existing window pattern that we have actually evolves out of, which is really erratic. If you look at that in on the section on the axons, there's kind of windows all over and they follow no real rhyme or reason. And but it has to do with the interior plan. So that's sort of why the windows are shaped and located the way that they are. There are certain expansions that are happening in that wall. And again, this is all staff level modification within this non-visible facade, but it's again reflective of what's happening in the interior, but not just because there are proposed interior changes, but because it's a really extraordinarily quirky extension. And I think that when you look at the existing condition, it gives you a sense of that, and they are sort of working within that existing condition because of the floor levels and where
Yeah.
things end up.
Okay, I can understand that, but all right, I'll move on from this. But I still don't understand why you changed the kind of glazing. I
Yeah.
understand why the windows are now positioned how they're positioned. It relates to the interior configuration, but I'm not sure why you have different glazing on each of the windows. But anyway, I'll move on. Oh, is that wall, by the way, that's a brick wall, correct? But that you've okay, that's not reflected on here, but it's a brick wall. What were you referring to when you were talking about glazing of the walls? That was all brick back there.
Glazing
You had
walls.
talked
Oh,
about
we're coating it. It's going to be, because the rear wall is painted, we're going to paint the side elevation of the existing extensions to match the rear wall.
And that's an actual color or white, or you trying to
Like
maintain
an
the
off-white, yes. Like this.
Oh, I see. All right. Lastly, what's the dimension of the added bulkhead?
The dimension of the added bulkhead is, I wrote this down because I know you like dimensions. There are two bulkheads. There's a stair and an elevator. The stair bulkhead is, oh wait, I'm sorry. This is mechanical enclosures. I wrote the wrong thing down for you. Let me go to the elevator bulkhead for you. We'll zoom in.
Well, the dimensions of the mechanical enclosures would be important.
Similar, right? So there's the elevator bulkhead is 7.5 wide and 8, and then the stair bulkhead is 8.5 wide. And those are 4 feet 5 inches over the new parapet level, over the new cornice.
So the overall height of the building becomes what?
It doesn't change. It's exactly the same. It's right at the maximum allowable, the existing bulkhead is, and that's what we're matching right here.
Okay, so you're not
Not
raising
increasing the height. Mm-mm.
Okay. I imagine we're probably going to take this as one part, but I wish we could break it up. But thank you for your answers. Thank you.
Sure.
Elizabeth?
I think that this is a fairly small and restrained alteration. I find it scarcely visible. I do worry a bit with the change in glazing where it occurs, because I feel that it robs a bit of texture from the rear facade. But I think you've done a decent restrained job, and I will support it.
Thank you.
This is Judy. I think Christina left, so Judy.
I would support it. I have no questions.
Ed? Ed, are you there?
Nope, I'm good.
Jane and David?
Oh, David, I'm just going to support the application. I have no other comment. And David, go ahead. You'll be so eloquent.
I don't feel the need to be eloquent. I think Erin explained it just fine. Elizabeth summed it up. The windows in the rear are part of the certificate of appropriateness, or they're done at staff level.
There's
Windows in the rear, which are aluminum, is
yes. Technically, I think the third floor, the top of the third floor will be not yes, they will be public hearing, commission level. Everything else that's not visible is staff level. Does that make sense?
You're saying the windows at the third floor. Why are they
So in terms of visibility, when you really zoom in here, the window heads are caught in this view. And so I think that because of that, those masonry opening changes are hearing level. But the ones that face east and are not part of the hearing.
But other than the front, they're all going to be aluminum, right?
Yes.
And therefore, we are voting on whether we're accepting aluminum windows, right?
On the rear facade, yes. They can, if they weren't changing the masonry opening, they could replace them with aluminum at staff level. It's the change in the masonry opening that is what's being reviewed, yeah.
I have no problem. It's not like you see this building in the round, and
No.
therefore you want to have wood windows all the way around. You don't see the building that way.
And you're seeing it 200 feet away.
Right, and you are looking at the precedent of over 200 where the windows are aluminum and the fronts where the windows are wood. So I have no problem with this at all, and it has my support.
So I think we can go to a vote. Does anybody want to propose a resolution?
Resolution to approve as presented.
Is there a second? Kimberly? Great, thank you. So I think we can go to a vote, Kevin.
Marco?
Let me think.
Kimberly?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
No.
Alita? Michelle?
No.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Marco?
I'm going to abstain.
So it looks like it was a move to approve. So thank you so much for your presentation, Erin.
Thank you.
Really,
Thank you for
looks, I
doing
wish
this.
I could now have a tour of the interior to see that little extension in the back.
Yeah.
But in any case, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Do we have any old business? Has everybody read the New York
Yes.
Times?
Wait. No. Oh, can I say?
The Kimmelman article
No.
about the Frick? Alita, you're so good at sending us articles and you missed them.
Because I didn't see the paper yet today. I am a place I don't have a
today's
hard
paper.
copy.
Today's paper.
I know, but I will later. No, I wanted to just say that because the mayor's charter commission is looking at land use, including whether construction should be a factor in landmark designation, the impact on construction. I urge anyone from this committee to go to the next charter task force meeting of this community board and vote if there is a resolution, if you're interested, in opposition to that particular part of the charter. So we need people from landmarks to speak out. I'm not enough.
And what is this?
The mayor has a new charter commission because the city council proposed one, so he has his own. And one of the things they're looking at is it seemed to be from the articles I read that construction, whether designating a building as a landmark would have an impact on construction of other types of buildings in the area.
That's really stretching it.
Yeah, so Ed is one of the co-chairs and he has his hand up, so he may correct me or may speak out or whatever he wants, but I'd call on him if I were you, please.
Well,
Thank
Ed,
you.
let's hear it.
Oh, I'm unmuted. Sorry. Sorry, I was looking to unmute. Yes. Hold on a second. I'm at the office, so it's a little messy. Yes, Alita's right. There's all kinds of ideas out there. There are two competing commissions. The city council has one. The mayor has one. They both are claiming democracy as their mantra. And land use and housing is a topic, although as we pointed out, Sherry and I as co-chairs at our last meeting, and our next meeting, by the way, is April 8th before land use next month. It's wide open. We've heard, David, literally everything from soup to nuts. The designations of government reform and housing and land use are as broad as can possibly be. I've heard every possible proposal. But I will say that neither commission, at least as of right now, and I haven't checked in the last 2 hours, but I haven't seen anything from either commission as to concrete proposals from either. So I just simply say for those in this community to keep an eye out. We'll try to keep you informed as best we can, but I won't go on about why they compete, but they are, and there are lots of ideas. And please come to our next meeting and bring. Last thing, and I'll quit, is bring any ideas that you have, especially in this area. This is one of the few committee meetings I come to because I was interested in the Met. But please, we're desperate for any ideas that you have to improve the landmarking process, land use, review, anything is game. So please, if you have ideas, suggestions to make things better, more efficient, we are all ears. And last point is, I have heard talk at, I believe it was the Bronx Commission meeting, of talk of people saying that these landmark areas are a problem and we need to get rid of them. Why do we have these old buildings? We need to build housing. We need to build. So there's a lot of talk. Brad Lander has suggested that we pave over all the public golf courses and we build on them. So these are the ideas that are out there. David, I see your reaction. I get it. Exactly. So please, if I can sound the alarm bell any louder, I don't know how. So I'll stop. But it was a very informative meeting. I'm glad it came tonight, by the way. It was very nicely done. It's over my pay grade, architecturally speaking, but I love hearing everybody. I always get smarter when I listen to all of you.
Well, I guess we have to watch and see what they're planning, but
yeah,
giving you my professional opinion. Landmarks don't preclude building anything we would want to build next to them.
I don't think that's their point. I think the point is that they don't designate a building if it can't be torn down for something bigger, shinier, newer.
They're thinking of de-designating, I think, also, David, is just de-designate
I
these
guess
areas.
I've read some of that, and I guess the way you put it, I took it a little differently, but it doesn't matter if they want to tear it down. That's one thing, but if you're going to leave it, then obviously it doesn't matter. But okay, Michelle, you've had your hand up.
Thank you. There's a general move in both charter proposals to limit the input of the community board and to expedite the land use process to the extent where they'll be cutting out a lot of steps. So there's the general feeling here is that they're after historic districts, they're after land use issues, they want less oversight, more flexibility, all the things that we particularly do not like. All the things and methods that we use to protect our historic districts and our landmarks will be threatened. So I suggest we watch this very, very closely. I'm on our Charter Commission committee, and they haven't proposed anything precise yet, but I think we should watch it very carefully and come up with some protections of our own.
Is the thrust of this just to build housing, or are they looking at other kinds of building?
Dave talked, David, about doing away, again, just from what I heard, the Bronx meeting in particular, there was a lot of people very upset with community boards. To Michelle's point, they think that we serve way too long at 8 years and that they should be cycling these folks onto community boards for 4 years at a time. That's another proposal that is out there. They view community boards as more of an impediment to the process. And that now that is not the view of the commissions. I can't say that's the view of the commissions. All I can say is I have heard testimony to that effect, and I heard that in the Bronx meeting that I listened to. I think it was in March. They have one on the 9th during our land use in Staten Island. It's about government reform. And if you want, the 23rd of April is the Manhattan meeting, and they're talking about land use and housing. That's the topics per se for those meetings, just to let you know. But yeah, community boards, they're not happy. Some folks in the building real estate, they find that the community boards are an impediment to the process.
Well, we're only an impediment if they don't do a good job. Marco?
Thank you. I'm gonna say I don't understand why the Bronx is in that direction. In the Bronx, they demolish everything. Beautiful buildings that you were in Manhattan, it will be an outcry of the whole community. So they keep demolishing everything. Nothing is new in the Bronx. No, I'm sorry, nothing is old with merits to be landmark. And wonderful buildings, they demolish. There's no problem because they don't have landmark buildings over there, even though they deserve many of them. I don't understand why they are in support of this direction. Now, let me address the issue of the Charter Commission. The Charter Commission, what it is as an elimination of the real urban planning. They don't want to have a whole comprehensive urban planning of the city. And everybody create this Charter Commission just only to create goals that is convenient for, I think, for some people, and not in reality for the benefit of the city. And I think I'm really concerned about that. Thank you.
I only thought that happened in Washington. Okay.
Is it too awful to suggest that we count on Michelle? You're on the Charter Revision Commission and Ed Housing to keep us informed. And I also want to suggest that we move to adjourn unless somebody else has another comment on this subject.
I have another comment. Since you mentioned my name, I just want to also tell you that the city council's charter commission is they formed it they formed it in reaction to the mayor's charter commission I should say the other way around. The council had a charter commission because they want to curb the power of the mayor. The mayor heard that and then had a charter commission because he wants to be able to protect that domain. So you have competing entities here, but it's all about power. But the way it's going to end up is the only people that are going to lose power is going to be the community. They'll end up with plenty of power. I'm not worried about them.
Well, let's have a move to adjourn.
Well, I would take that. Except, Alita's had her hand up for a while. Has his hand up again, and then
very quickly, Marco, the Grand Concourse in the Bronx is landmarked, I believe, all or most of it. But also, a commissioner on the de Blasio's Charter Commission told me that limiting community terms was in order to consolidate the mayor's power, and is pushed by the real estate industry, because if we say no and we don't have institutional memory, then it is not such a great offset to their ability to hire the most expensive and most powerful lobbying, legal, and PR firms in the city. So that's all I'm going to say about this. But please make your voices heard. If you care about landmarks, if you care about historic districts, if you care about construction, it's really important to let Shari and Ed know, and to let the city know. Thank you for the time. I know it's late. Thank you.
Ed will give you the last word.
Thanks, David. I will second Jane's motion to adjourn and quickly say that if anybody's interested, I'll be at full board in person and happy to talk more about, how this is shaking out if you want before the meeting on Wednesday. But I second Jane's motion.
Okay, well, see you all on Wednesday.